Yes.
Confess.
Confess what?
Confess. You started dating when you were working. Confess.
100%.
Okay.
Oh no, that's not a secret. But the way that it happened, I think when I tell people the story, they're like, "There's no ways, right?" So he was my boss, right? We spent a lot of time together, not even just with just me, but he had a really great relationship with all the presenters. You know, he was the type of boss who, how should I like his school fees, able to say, "Yo, B, when I go school crash," and he'd be like, "Oh, how much do you need? Okay, let me help you with that." That was the person that he was. At the time, I just had my baby drama. And I remember we're sitting one time, I think I walked in and he was wearing like a t-shirt that said Hollywood. And I said, "Oh, Hollywood, Maverick, Top Gun." And he was like, "What? You know that?" And I was like, "We should get married and have kids together."
Okay, stop. She literally postponed, what's the word? Proposed to her husband. Oh, wow.
I did.
I want to get the scoop on this. Welcome to Moving Humanity Forward. My name is Kathy Malejani and it is the month of March. So we are set to celebrate women in this month of March. And so to help me do that, I've got somebody who's, can I say, walked the same streets as far as radio and broadcasting is concerned, but certainly gone on to what I believe is greener pastures. Certainly many conversations to be had because of the field that she is now in. Back in the day, we used to call her Zizi Panther. I'm not talk about that name, but I have in studio with me, Mimi Dintwa. Mimi, thank you for joining us. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. It's weird because I listened to the Cookie Jar back in the day. That was like one of my favorite shows. So you doing this now, yeah, full circle.
Full circle moment, right? And you talked about 8, and that's the day we celebrate the International Day of Women in March. So I'm celebrating you as a woman, and I was telling you there's certain paths in your life that you have walked that I'm so proud of you for. Very excited to hear more about that journey. So let's start there, Mimi, with just who Mimi is. Give us a bit of a background. You were actually explaining to me that your degree is actually in sports psychology.
Yes, the master's degree.
How does a sports psychologist end up on radio and pushing a career in radio? Take me there.
Born, raised in Mahalape, moved to Francistown for boarding school. School.
Okay.
I studied my undergrad in B Psych, but at the same time, I'd always been a sports kid. You know, growing up with a father who played tennis, coached softball. My mom was a swimmer. Sports was like a thing in the house.
What was your sport?
I played basketball. I played tennis. I played volleyball, but basketball was that's my baby.
Okay.
So I'd always had an interest in sports, and naturally, I think I always thought I'd do something in sports, even though when I was in standard 5, and I was thinking about this the other day. I remember I did a science project on the brain and its functions, and I actually brought a live goat brain to come and demonstrate, the different parts of the brain. And then it's weird because years later, I'm a psychologist. I want to go into brain trauma and stuff like that. So it's just, you realize that things work out the way that they're supposed to. You end up where you're supposed to be. But yeah, sports and then psychology, it made sense.
Okay. So given that was the idea, the thinking, how does that then translate into radio and broadcasting?
Radio. Interesting. I got into radio. I didn't want to. I had a perception about radio and radio personalities.
I'm so interested. What was the perception you had?
That but radio never sits in a school.
Okay.
And at the time when I first started on radio, I was in my 4th year UB. And the first interview I ever did was on a show called Youth Affairs, because I was in my internship for psychology, clinicking. And I came into, listeners would call in and would talk about their problems and stuff like that, right? And then fine, I did that. Second time I came back, very big part of the basketball community at the time, and I was the PRO. So I did of the basketball association.
Okay.
And this was 2012. So I came in, I did a basketball update. Programs manager at the time heard me and he was like, "Have you thought about being on radio?" And I said, "Ish, Dukesta." No.
Because in your mind, it's for people who are
and at the
dropouts.
time, at the radio station that I was at, Kathy, or that they was trying to recruit me, none of them had a degree.
So you're like, oh, this so beneath me.
I mean, technically, yes, I did. But also I had to think about my mom, because she would have been on somewhere out radio. No, please get serious with your life. So that's how radio happened. I stumbled into it. It really was not my intention. I was supposed to go to do my master's right after I finished my undergrad, but I paused that for radio.
Okay. And I want to share this because we were just recounting earlier before we got here that because you were saying, oh no, radio. And I was like, but I remember you somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So 100 years ago, I was PRO for a soccer game. It was called Disky Trivia.
Yes.
And those 100 years ago, you were doing something in sports.
Yes.
So that was how the door got opened into you getting on radio.
Yes, ma'am.
What were you doing?
I was doing a feature called the Olympic Gold Rush. This is in 2012 when I think Botswana, the team at Botswana was there. So I would be having interviews, getting to find out what's going on, and I'd give daily updates at, I think it was 6:20 in the morning. So I was doing a lot of work with the sports guys at the time. So when you were coming into studio at that hour, I had been looking at recordings and cutting clips and all of that. So that's where it really started, the Olympic Gold Rush.
Okay. So from the Olympic Gold Rush, then you actually got into radio fully.
Yes.
Take me through that journey real quick.
Then they forced me into the trainee program. So we did that for...
How long was that?
It was about, I don't know how many months. So I had an advantage over the guys that came in Moklasingeli because I had already started doing the features. So I was a bit more aware of everything on radio. So I had started doing stand-ins, or I'd be sitting there and I also read the news. I did sports updates. So we did that for about 8 months, and then we did graveyard shifts. And we would do 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. or whatever time. A year later, 2013, I got my first show with Dollar Mag on Afternoon Drive.
Wow.
In 2013.
Okay, so at this point, Dollar Mag was already a bit of a name on radio, right? So you're coming on board and you're joining somebody who's a well-known name and brand. I want to understand if this is where Zizi Panther was born, and I want to know who's Zizi Panther? Where's that coming from?
So I had no idea that I would be doing the show with Dollar, because at the time he was doing it with Miss B. Now we know how big, larger than life persona Miss B was. So we had to think of a name, because at the time when I was coming on Yarn FM, there was already a name.
Okay.
Who was doing, I think, a show with Drew a weekend.
Okay.
So I couldn't use my actual name. And my Xhosa name is Zimasa.
Okay.
My mom is Xhosa. So, and then I played for a team called Panthers. So we were sitting and I was recording Olympic Gold Rush, Neketswa Gaming, Chiefs and Pirates in SA. And then Gobs, who was the producer at the time, says to me, why don't we call you Zizi Panther? And I was like, what?
What's that?
What is that? He's like, no, your name, which is your third name, let's cut it, make it a Zizi instead of Zimasa. And then Panther from your basketball team. It's a cool name. And I was like, okay, let's roll with it. And then Zizi Panther was born in that little studio, no voice recording, what was happening over the weekend, sports. And then I got thrown with Dollar Mag on FSB Reloaded. And that is the beginning of everything.
All right. So that was the beginning. And it wasn't so much that you were thrown in the deep end, because you did have quite a bit of experience.
Just a little bit, just a few months, Kathy.
It's still not, I mean, my journey, I literally just landed on radio.
Yeah.
But how was your journey in radio? Take me through that, and then take me through now as you exit out of radio.
Yeah. It was fun. It was great. You get to meet a lot of people. But it's not without the drama and everything that comes with it. The fact that you're in people's ears for 3 hours every single day, there's a certain familiarity that they have with you.
Yeah.
And then I came on when social media was becoming really big. And there was this thing, I remember I'd get comments about how I was trying to be the new Miss B because of the energy. And now I've been thrown in with Dollar. It wasn't great. I don't have tough skin. I grew up a people pleaser, perfectionist. So when people had negative things to say about me, it crushed
It
me.
hit home.
It did. I hated radio for a while because I was like, why am I still doing it? And that's the curse. When you're good at something, I will toot my own horn. I was good at radio. When you're good at something, sometimes you stay in there longer, because you're like, I'm good at it. Why not? But it was difficult. It was difficult. But one thing that came out of radio was my husband. So I will take it. I will take it.
Okay, so I mean, since you are bringing him into the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because you were working with him at the time, and I mean, he was working with me at a different radio station, right?
Before he came,
FM, and then he went off to a different radio station. So you were working together.
Yes.
Confess.
Confess what?
Confess. You started dating when you were working to confess.
100%.
Okay.
Oh no, that's not a secret. But the way that it happened, I think when I tell people the story, they're like, there's no ways, right? So he was my boss, right? We spent a lot of time together, not even just with just me, but he had a really great relationship with all the presenters. He was the type of boss who, how should I like his school fees, able to say, yo, B, when I go school crash, and he'd be like, oh, how much do you need? Okay, let me help you with that. That was the person that he was. At the time, I just had my baby drama. And I remember we're sitting one time, I think I walked in and he was wearing like a t-shirt that said Hollywood. And I said, oh, Hollywood, Maverick, Top Gun. And he was like, what? You know that? And I was like, we should get married and have kids together.
Okay, stop. She literally postponed, what's the word? Proposed to her husband. Oh, wow.
I did.
I want to get the scoop on this one. So don't you go anywhere. Keep it right here. This is the Moving Humanity Forward podcast. Welcome back to Moving Humanity Forward. And you know what? We took this break right as Mimi was telling us that she basically proposed. Now, if you know the name Mimi Dintwa, you're talking about a larger than life figure. This person was my colleague at Duma FM at some point. Again, larger than life figure. And he moves on to Yarona FM to become, I think, programs manager at the time. Yeah. And this is who Mimi is saying, hey, listen, let's get married. That's how it started. I want to believe it was a joke at the time.
It wasn't.
Oh, you were serious?
I was serious.
Why?
Because he embodied the characteristics of a husband.
And you were attracted to him at this point?
I wasn't.
So you wanted to get married to somebody that you weren't attracted to?
We were going to date while we were married and would figure it out. What attracts me to a man is his intelligence.
Wait. So was this something you had a conversation about? Like, sometimes you just be with people and you get to realize, oh, this person has weird thinking like I do. Or we have something.
Yes.
Was that one of those?
It was because I spent, show prep and all these things. You get to see.
Yeah, spend time with him.
We like the same stuff. We played basketball.
So the idea of dating while married,
yes,
figuring stuff out. Yeah. Was this something that you guys had thrown around before?
No.
And this was Zizzy's idea?
It was.
Mimi's idea?
It was my idea. It was my idea. And I was going on a trip at the time to Durban. And he said to me, let's talk about this when you come back. That's literally how it happened.
No, I want to understand when you said that. It sounds like something very spur of the moment, but it seems like you were already so sure of it. So you had meditated on it?
I had watched this man for a year. He had been my boss for a year. Mm-hmm. I'd seen how he interacted with his son. I'd seen how he interacted with us as his presenters, how he carried himself. And I was like, yeah, that's someone that I think I could get married to. Mm. It wasn't specifically him. I said he embodies the characteristics. Yeah. And then we go to start talking about family and all these things. And I was like, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if it was actually him.
Okay, so she literally decides she wants to marry this man, but she's not attracted to him? Mm-mm. And then she's going to Durban and starting to fantasize and then getting attracted to him?
There we go.
Okay.
The attraction wasn't physical at the time. It was more mental, more spiritual.
I actually know what you mean.
Right? And he had come to, I used to have a prayer group. K-Love was part of it. Kel's at my house. Okay. And this one time he was like, what happens? Like, oh, just pray, dog. And he was like, no, I want to see. So he came for the prayer meeting. We had the prayer meeting, and in that prayer meeting, he prayed, and I was like, ha ha.
This is it.
this is it for me.
So this proposal happens after that prayer meeting.
Yes,
Okay, so the prayer meeting also was a
cemented, and I think it's
cemented.
I think it cemented it for him because I cooked and he was.
So you cooking cemented it for him.
Morogo. What
was in the
spinach?
Morogo? I want to know
girls?
what was in it. What was in it?
Love. Love, Kathy. Love was in the spinach.
We want this recipe. Maybe you should share this recipe with us. Maybe we should leave this at link at the bottom of this. Huh?
But Madinyana, copyright, intellectual property for my Morogo recipe. But yes.
So so you have this conversation and he says, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's take it through to where now you're becoming Mrs. Dintwa.
So then that happens. That's in December of 2016. I come back from the trip. We agreed 3rd December. He's like, bet. So what I'm going to do is obviously I'm your boss. So we need to have a conversation with the powers that be. I'm assuming the conversation happened in January. This is the drama where we land, our faces land on newspapers.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I remember there was
the front page. Mm-hmm. My mother called me about it. So he goes, has a conversation. I guess it didn't go well, whatever. So then 2 weeks later, he gets a letter where his position has been made redundant. 2 weeks later, I get a letter that says my position has been made redundant. But coup de grace, we weren't the only people that lost our jobs at the time. There were other...
there was a
lot of us, Minks, TPS, quite a large. And at that time, we had a new station manager that had come. So I guess we'll use that as that's how they lost their jobs. But okay.
Okay, so you've just decided to start dating in December and then you both lose your jobs
in January
by Valentine's Day.
Before.
How was Valentine's Day that year?
Yes. Fantastic. We went out for dinner.
You're newly dating at this point?
Yeah, now we're dating. Now we're getting to know each other. This is February. March. February. His family goes to my family. This is before he does the proposal.
So he's on board with let's get married and we'll figure everything out.
Have you met me?
Okay.
Of course he was not going to say no to me.
Okay.
But yeah, he's on board. We do that. That's when he had the conversation with the powers that be at the station. And then February goes well. His family goes to ask for my hand in marriage. April at a braai, he does the official proposal. It's in video. So all of us at Ibiza, he did his proposal. Favorite song.
I have so many questions. Last one.
Yes.
So you guys just decided between the space of December, January, and February that you guys were the ones for each other.
Why are we wasting time?
No, wait, don't. And so you decided you were the ones.
Yes.
And so you've seen his characteristics.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, this is husband material.
Mm-hmm.
You cooked special Morocco recipes.
Yes.
And you're a prayer warrior. He's also seen you at work and, the face doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So both of you decided, let's get married. Then we'll date while we are getting married.
Yes, ma'am.
He has a son.
Mm-hmm.
At which point did you meet the son? Because that's also a big consideration, I want to believe. And in that space of 3 months, he's already sending his uncles over, the parents. You guys are getting married.
I met his son sometime in January.
Okay.
Yeah, before schools opened, because I know I helped him with the school stuff, getting his supplies and everything. And I had a daughter, by the way. So they actually spent time together. And then he took a drive with the kids to explain to his son, oh, by the way, I'm going to get married. And that lady is the person I'm getting married to. Do you like her? How do you feel about her? With the hours that you spent with her, are you okay with it? And yeah, that conversation happened. I knew of him, but I only met him in January.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the kids gelled, because I want to imagine if the kids hadn't, it would have kind of put a bit of a span.
I mean, my daughter was like, how old, guys? She was just over a year.
Okay, so she was too young.
Yeah,
but Bonnie's son
he was 13.
Enough. Yeah,
he was 13.
If Bonnie's son is anything like Bonnie,
he's the opposite.
Oh, he's quiet.
He's really quiet. He is quiet, sweetest boy. And that's the thing. You'd imagine that there'd be a little Bonnie in him, but he's really chilled. He was really polite, very nice kid. Played with Alani like they've known each other for years. So that for me was like, right place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fast forward, then you get married.
August that year.
And so what are you doing in this time? Because again, you've both lost your jobs.
Yes.
What are you doing at this point?
And that's the thing, right? So we had this illusion in our heads where we're not going to ever need jobs. Like people, guys, come on. we'll have people fighting for us. That was not the case. But at the time, I mean, he's still friends with Thapelo Letsholo, who owned obviously the PR company and was doing all sorts of other things. So he literally picked up the phone and was like, yo, my wife needs a job. So what are we doing about it? And Thapelo was like, okay, let's see what we can do. The conversations were had. I did an interview with one of his PR companies, and I was coming in as the media liaison. So this is the person that would prep radio interview questions, because I had been on radio. Yeah. So who's better suited to create questions for radio than the person who was asking them at one point? So I went into work at an agency at that point, and this is in March. So yeah, we worked, and then he started ICE 100 at that point. So we were quite happy. We were good. And I think above it all, we had always said, we knew that the possibility was there. But it had always been, it's a job. Has a company rather you spend time with the person that you love. If God has given you that one person, why would you pick a job over that person? Obviously, people would think that's stupid because my D survival. But when you believe in God, certain things, they don't matter. Yeah.
I love that. So both of you have a firm foundation in faith, basically?
Yes. His was bigger than mine. Yeah. Oh, Bunny reminds me to pray every day. Like, don't have what? So he's like a man of faith, like proper. That's one of the things that attracted me to him.
I really like that. And I think that's very important. But I wonder, in terms of, especially this perception that you just talked about, that is easy, right?
Yeah.
How many doors have you seen open, and also how many have you seen close? Because I think people think too much that it's all fun and sunshine and rainbows. But unfortunately, sometimes when people know your names, it'll just close doors for you automatically, like inexplicably.
100%.
So take me through. I mean, and we expect you to be Botswana's Jay-Z and Beyonce. So
that was thrown around at some point. I was like, yeah, guys, calm down. Yeah. Sometimes people don't like the persona that you are on radio. So automatically they don't like you when you walk into the room.
That is true.
Yeah, Lita blind. Oh, you guys think you're so talented. Oh, Lita Beyonce, Jay-Z, Botswana, watch. And they'll close the doors. So the very few doors were open. 2 were open and 100 were closed. But you use what you have and you just continue. I mean, a year later I was back on air. So clearly there was no lack of ability or skill. And that's one thing that we always knew. We're always going to be talented people, and somehow we're going to create money out of that creativity. He still did voiceovers here and there. We figured out a way.
All right, so let's move on and talk about then what happened next, because my recollection is not very clear, but I do recall that at some point you, as you said, got back on radio, but then you got pregnant, and I remember you getting off radio.
Yeah.
And in my mind, you kind of took time off, and I was saying that to you, that I think that's such a beautiful story, taking time off and doing this. And in our culture, we take time off. You really just seclude yourself and spend time with your child. Is that what you did?
I did that. I went back on air for just a year. I left after my mom's passing. And at the time I was, I gave birth to Atara. Lost my mom. And I was like, I need to go back. You know, I just need to come back to myself. So I did the whole housewife, getting up in the morning, really relaxed life for a few months. I needed that because I needed to think about the next chapter of my life. I had done radio for about 8 years at the time. And I'm a firm believer in that you have multiple talents, and at some point you should nurture and grow each and every one of those talents. I did the radio thing. I was great at it. Have an award for it. I should have brought it next time. Remind me. But then I was thinking I need to go back to what I studied, because I had my undergrad in psychology, but before my mom passed, the day that she passed, she was like, you should go back to psychology. That's what you need to be doing. And who am I to refuse the words of someone who's about to leave the earth, you know? And I tell people that's literally how I went back to psychology. It's my mom. So I went back.
Okay, so you went back and did your master's? Take me through that.
Yes, I did my master's, and because I'd always loved sports, it had always been my thing that I wanted to do a master's degree in sports psychology. So I did that. I enrolled at UB and I started. It was great. And one of my lecturers at the time happened to be my uncle's mentee. So I've got Professor Mokhati is my dad's younger brother. He had always been in the sports fraternity. That was like one of my role models. So it just felt like it made sense that all of this was happening the way that it did. And during that time when I started my master's as well, when he's like, oh, I put a flyer on Twitter for you to start like talking to people. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, I created a flyer that says you'll be offering like counseling sessions. I'm like, what? As he was saying that, I get a phone call from someone. My first ever client.
I love this. So you guys haven't had this conversation at any point. Your husband decides, yep, my girl she's qualified. She needs to be doing this.
Yes.
He creates the flyer. He puts it out there.
He always feels like I downplay my abilities. And obviously with the like imposter syndrome at some point, you're scared to try these things. It's new. There's so many psychologists out there. Why would people pick me? All these questions. So I was delaying going into it. And then he was just like, this woman is not serious. I'm going to force her to do it. Yeah. So he did that and I'm grateful for that.
All right, so that was your first client,
Yes.
and I want to believe that was the beginning or the birth of Kuding.
Yes.
So I want to let you know that we'll be right back. Don't get it. This is the Moving Humanity Forward podcast. Find us on Facebook, MHF Podcast, or you can find us on TikTok, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube by typing Moving Humanity Forward podcast. Stay with us. This is episode 8 of Moving Humanity Forward. And as we were speaking right at the beginning of our conversation, Mimi mentioned that 8 is a magical number for her. I believe you said the month of your anniversary, your birthday.
Yeah.
There are a couple of issues that are 8 in your life, and also just how you mentioned that you kind of went back to the sports, the psychology, and there's somebody there. And I wanted to say to you that if you have faith, you know there's no such thing as coincidence.
It doesn't exist. Everything is God ordained. Everything is by divine design and intervention. So I genuinely believe that.
So your divinely God ordained husband put a flyer for you.
Yes.
And as he's telling you about it, the divine call comes in. And that was the birth of Kuding.
Yes.
Kuding means at the root?
100%.
Talk to me.
So when I first started, I had no idea. Obviously, you have to have a name of your practice or your business, whatever it may be. And I was struggling with it. And I remember I prayed. I was like, okay, God, clearly you put me in the space. What am I supposed to call this thing? It literally appeared in a dream.
Tell me about this dream.
This dream was just a tree. And it literally had in cursive, Kuding.
At like in the roots of the tree?
It wasn't just across like where, you know, on how trunk. And it was just written Kuding, but you could see the tree was a really big tree. I'd assume it's a Moana tree, but Hase Moana ka gore mathara thing looked like the leaves of an oak tree.
Okay.
But the symbolism of that was the strength and the size of those trees.
Yeah, because they're both.
Yes, they're both really big and strong trees, but also their strength comes from the strength of their roots. That's where Kuding, because I felt like it's important for me to deal with issues where they stem from. The healthier the roots, the healthier the leaves.
So basically that's how you started your practice.
Yeah.
And I want to get you to take us through your practice. Now, your practice, he signed you up as a counselor. Was that, and you're coming from the sports background.
Yes.
So that's not necessarily the same thing.
100%.
Right?
It's
so
not.
Was that something you had spoken about and that's the direction you said you wanted to go? Or was this something where he looked at you and you're like, you know what? I know you, wifey.
Yeah.
I know you better. This would work for you.
It was Khotoka Maidi.
Okay.
That's what it really was. Because at the time we needed to make money. He was bringing in money, but obviously it's not consistent because also if anybody knows my husband, he doesn't like structure. He doesn't like 9-to-5s. So it was about, okay, what can I do that can bring in income while I'm trying to figure out what to do with the sports psychology degree? Because obviously I want to work with teams. That has always been my thing, for me to work with the young teams in that space. But obviously because I'd done psychotherapy, under CBT. So cognitive behavioral therapy was my training for undergrad. So I know I'll be able to do counseling. So that's literally where, and then I called Botswana Counselors Association. I'm like, guys, this is my paperwork. This is what I need to do. Can you sign me up? They were like, yeah, of course. Obviously, these are your restrictions. So hell, and I'm like, I know and stuff like that. So that's literally how I started. Needed to make sure that I crossed my T's and dotted my I's before I went on to do anything.
Okay. So you got that first call. Very shortly afterwards, you had the dream. Then you got the name. You got everything, regulated, legit, everything. How has that journey been? I always wonder about therapists, and I wonder who's the therapist for the therapist.
The therapist is supposed to have a therapist. We deal with a lot, but my journey has been amazing. Most of my clients in the beginning were people that listened to me on radio.
Okay. Wasn't that weird for you though?
It was. It genuinely was, because they would bring up things like, oh, remember that one time when you and Dollar, and I was just like, guys, I really don't remember. But at the same time, I understood it, because finding a therapist is like finding the perfect pair of shoes. It should fit.
Yeah.
It should be comfortable, because you're going to be having uncomfortable conversations. You're opening up yourself to this person. So what radio does, and you know this, people become our friends. Well, we become their friends without even knowing
them.
Yeah, every day they look forward to catching up with Tsala Boni. So that relationship, I think it really did benefit me. I must credit radio for my clients. I mean, I still have clients now who call me Zizzy still, and it's interesting. I love it. Working with young people has been nothing short of amazing.
Wait, so I actually want to find out do you have a demographic? Are you focused on this is my target market, or have you just put it out there and said, hey, whoever reaches out and wants to, and also before we close off, one of the things I want you to do is just advise whoever's watching on what they need to do when they're looking for a counselor, because I've heard so many people share horror stories, and even in my own experience, there are really fly-by-nights in this area. So you want to be, you want to make sure that you're getting somebody who is certified with the Botswana Counselors Association.
100%. So I don't have a key demographic, but nothing is a coincidence, right? I get a lot of young people between the ages of 18 to 35.
Okay.
And this is because every therapist has a style of therapy. My style of therapy, I have a client who calls it hip-hop therapy. So I'm relatable to that age demographic. I'm going to be the type of person that you're going to cuss in a session, and I'm okay with it. I won't feel some type of way, because it's your personality, it's your character. I won't assassinate you for it. I'm not going to try and make you into someone that you're not. So I'm really easygoing. My clients have access to me. It's easy. I'd like to think I'm a really cool therapist. That's what I say to them. So it like getting a little that demographic. But then I remember there was a session where I had 3 generations. I had a 75-year-old. I had his daughter who was 51, I think, and her daughter who was 24. So the daughter of 24 was my primary client. And she said, you know what? I need to bring my mom because we need to do a session together. Then she brought her mom. And then her mom said, you know what? I'm going to call my dad. You need to have a conversation with my dad. And that's how I'd like to think I cut across all generations. But yeah, predominantly I do have the younger. It goes back to Kuding, deal with it well, so that by the time they're adults in their 50s, we have healthy people walking around.
Yeah. And that's very important. I think because we're going to run out of time. Yes, it always happens. We're having fun. I want you to please, I think I'll close off with you just sharing what somebody needs to just take us through some of the issues that you have met, some of the challenges that we are finding common in Botswana.
Yeah. Big one is we're an anxious nation.
We're anxious.
Very anxious. Anxious about the future. Anxious about where I went wrong in my life, what went wrong in my life, who wronged me. Am I going to be the person that I thought I was always going to be? Slips into depression.
Yeah.
A lot of it. There's a lot of bipolar that goes undiagnosed. A lot of mental health issues in Botswana or diseases go undiagnosed. ADHD, mobaning, goes unnoticed. Autism, because it's different, you can be in different places on the spectrum, goes undiagnosed. So that's really important, that sometimes you don't have to have something terribly going wrong for you to just go see a professional, so that I be at ease for no, make it one say, listen, this is what you may need help with. So as a parent, look out for your children. Be very conscious how about in terms of behavioral patterns. You know, even if a child is throwing tantrums, try and find out why. Tantrum as a botepe. You know, back in the day, hey, one hyper, one hankan has a mama motola. ADHD, you know, so it's just some of those things. Anxiety, relationship problems, a lot of relationship problems. That's what I'm seeing a lot. A lot of stress, a lot of career decisions that were made by other people and just
for you,
100%. So that's what I'm seeing a lot.
Wow. I want you to leave us with a bit of hope. So I want you to speak to some of these as we close off. But before we do, what are some of the steps? What should somebody do? And it's so interesting that you said counselors are like shoes. It wasn't until a few years ago that I started really taking my own journey seriously that I realized that you don't just meet the first counselor along the way and say, yeah, this is my counselor. You actually have to shop around for a counselor. So take me through as you are shopping around for a counselor, what you should be looking for.
First thing, obviously, you'll go into, we've got different resources now, Facebook, all these directories where you can find them. When you make that first phone call, it's okay for you to ask also what type of therapy they do.
Okay.
There's different therapies.
What are they?
There's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's SID, but there's different ones.
I know about EMDR.
Yes, exactly. We've got the Christian-based therapy as well. So all these things are different. Make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into, because that person is not going to change themselves for that one client. They're going to use what they know. So find out, ask a lot of questions. Like you're asking about certification, ask for that. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not being nosy. You're going to see this person and completely open up yourself, right? Your journey in healing is dependent on this person as an accountability partner.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that you would want to do with somebody that you trust, right? First time that you go to someone, if you don't feel comfortable, it's okay to change. People say to me, what if ke change the therapist to 5? I always say, at one point though, you will land where you're supposed to land. Change them. Rather than you going to sit for an hour with someone and it's uncomfortable, you don't open up. Sometimes you even lie to the therapist. So you have to be really careful about things like that. It's okay to change your mind from time to time.
What can somebody expect in a therapy session? What are some of the things that they should be like, oh no, let me run? What,
The first thing is they always expect a couch. Sometimes it's not a couch. It's not. But yeah, I do have a couch. But what you can expect is you're going to find someone who's going to listen to you. You're going to talk more. People always have a problem with, hey, I feel like I'm here for you. The more that you talk with cognitive behavioral therapy, for instance, that I do, the driver of it is talk therapy. So you're going to talk because that's how I'm going to find out what's going on with you.
Yeah.
But there's going to be other things that I see there that, in the talking, I'm picking up things, your childhood trauma. I'm looking at your posture. I'm looking at this and that. So I'm going to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. This is the feedback. These are the tools that I'm going to give you. This is our treatment plan, rather. So it's just that expect a safe space for you to be yourself. I would advise be yourself. Don't hide who you are when you go to your therapist's office.
And that's very important, because otherwise you're just wasting everybody who's involved's time. You're not bringing your real persona to the table.
100%. I make this joke with my clients. I'm like, you're basically paying me to lie to me. Yeah. Make it make sense.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
So I want to also know, in terms of the work, because people always say, do the work. What work?
The work is unpacking everything and putting it on the table and putting it in little boxes and saying, this is what's happening with me. I have unresolved anger. I tend to people please. I am a perfectionist. I'm always worried about what people think about me. Then you go into those and ask yourself, what's causing me to behave this way? Once you get that, cognitive behavioral therapy is we look at how you view things, how you perceive things, and then we change that, we work on that so that there's behavioral change. So we deal with cognitive issues, and then for it to translate to behavioral change. So that's the whole point. That's the work.
That's the work.
Change is the work.
Yeah. I think I've gotten to a point where I've started to tell myself, being aware of a problem, big clap, have hands, right?
Yes.
But now
The follow-up.
Yeah. Like being aware is the first step, but be aware, right? Accept it, because too much we're in denial, we don't know.
Yes.
Once you do, right? So the work is, now I recognize it.
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'm going to choose a different
100%.
response.
I have to do something about it. Just knowing about it, yeah, it's cool and all. It's the beginning, but and then what?
Mimi, I knew we were going to run out of time. That's exactly what's happening. So I'd like you to speak to, because you mentioned quite an array of issues that you've met along the way.
Yeah.
And it really sounds like there's a lot that is on a whole lot of people's table. And I always try and tell people that sometimes people look at you and they just think you have your life, you know, in order, and life is flowing well for you. You look good. And everybody has issues. Every single one of us has issues. So please speak to someone listening who may have whatever issues they have, and just think, I mean, and it doesn't have to be a paid therapist. It can be your friend, but it needs to be somebody you trust. Just assist us on how we can get help for our issues, what we can do for them.
You don't have to wait for the point where things are really bad for you to talk, for you to purge. Our traumas are trapped in our bodies, and it always finds a way to come out. Have the conversation, have the difficult, awkward conversations. It's okay to have the difficult, awkward conversations. Those are the most important conversations that you need to have, right? And there's no shame in struggle. There's no shame in struggling. Financially, emotionally, physically, there's no shame. We all go through something.
At some point.
I may hide it really well, but right? In that room, nobody else matters but you. That's the most important thing. Get the help that you need. And sometimes just go and talk. You'll get to find out certain things about yourself that you had no idea were going on with you.
I love that. I'm definitely taking some of these home with myself, for myself. Mimi, where do we find you? How can we get a hold of you? How can we get some help from you?
I am not on any social media platforms. I joke. I'm only on one. I'm kind of trying to get out of that social media situation. But you can find me on Facebook, Mimi Dintwa. My number is 77629422. That's my business line. You're going to find the Kuding logo when you reach out to that number. You can get it. It's on WhatsApp as well. So if you can't get a hold of me because I am probably in a session, just drop me a text and I'll get to you. Email is gomuding@outlook.com. I think that's it. Yes, that's the one.
Formerly Zizi Panther. Now Mimi, the counselor.
Yes.
The owner and founder of Kuding. It's been such a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathy. This was the first interview that I've done about me. It's weird.
We're happy to be the ones to host you. And that's how we close off this session of Moving Humanity Forward. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the path and transition that Mimi has taken. I stay forever proud when I see somebody just absolutely mold themselves totally different. I love the analogy of a phoenix rising up from the ashes, and so very excited to have had this conversation. Do find our page, like it, subscribe, and let us know what you think. We're here for you. My name is Kathy Malajani. It's been an absolute pleasure.